Hi, everyone. We're going to review a posting of a video recently about uh, basically it was a personal attack on me, I thought, but actually it isn't a personal attack. It's saying that anybody who takes an oath, unless it's to God, and she made some sort of exception for that, I think, but, unless it's that, if you take an oath as a professional to the Constitution or as a doctor, a Hippocratic oath, or you're a firefighter, a policeman, you take oaths to the civil service, and all of these other oaths. She says they're all to Satan. She's accuses me in a video yesterday of taking an oath to Satan as a lawyer, and as a result of that, I don't take it personally because she had a video before that where she explains her reasoning is based on Matthew 5, verse 31 and onward. And we're going to look at that. But I just want to give her and everyone else a little notice here. So I'm going to do a little 2-minute lesson here. When you sign your tax returns, you're signing under oath. So if Brenda is correct, every time she's signed an oath of her taxes being true and correct, she doesn't know it's an oath. And the federal courts have said, well, even if it doesn't use the word oath, that's what it is. It says this is true and correct under penalty of perjury. That is known as a jurat or an oath. So the Office of the Chief Counsel of the Internal Revenue Service says that's an oath. So let me see if I can go here. Just want to show you how the IRS looks at this. People try to alter the jurat. They don't like it. It's an oath or my First Amendment rights and all that. How are they going to treat people who do that? So I just want to show Brenda, you once you know it's an oath, and now you do, is you're not allowed to change it or say, I don't believe in oaths or I have a religious objection, because you can't do that. People have tried that, and it ends up you're going to have a frivolous return penalty. And is that a serious penalty? Yes, it's $5,000. If it's based on a position which the secretary has identified as frivolous, well, what about the courts? They don't like people bringing, crossing it out and all that kind of stuff. So it's been, you can't change anything. You can't put in words there, my First Amendment. And so basically, you can't do anything that would negate the meaning of the jurat and say, I protest, or I'm signing this under duress. There's all kinds of case law on that. And here's one person who said, I didn't even know it was an oath. I didn't know that. I would never swear an oath, and for reasons of conscience, I never will. Well, if you don't, you're going to get fined every year $5,000 by the federal government. State of California, it's discretionary, but they basically have the same position, which is if you refuse to sign under penalty of perjury, you will have your tax return rejected, and you can get fined up to $5,000 in California, and in federal, you can actually end up owing $25,000 in a frivolous penalty if you try to appeal that. So they have a way of collecting it. So if you try to say, I want to appeal that and try to get a review, you got to win. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's only one case I could find on this about the religious objection that's specifically under that, and that was a defeat in a case called Borgeson, 10th Circuit, 1985, 757 F. Second, 1071, 1073. And these were people who were saying I had a religious belief against signing an oath once they understood it was a jurat when you read it. And then the court goes through the whole principle of why you can't use that First Amendment, because the government has a compelling state interest, very much like the way we told the Mormons, yes, you may have a religious belief that you can marry 5 or 6 women at a time, but in our rule of law, no, you cannot. And the First Amendment bows, the right of religious freedom bows to the law when it feels it's a compelling state interest, and that there's nothing more compelling then can you imagine if a judge had ever ruled the other way? That if you have a religious objection to signing your tax return, and of course, by law, there's a statute that unless it's signed under oath, your tax return is a nullity. So basically, you can file null tax returns that are not. Nobody can prosecute you for lying. It ain't going to work that way. No judge would do that, because it would dissolve the entire government tomorrow. Because if every American knew they had a First Amendment right to not sign under oath, the government, the whole function of government would come to a grinding halt. So this will never happen. It will always be exactly as Borgen says. I mean, but good luck, Brenda, if you want to insist that you yourself are signing an oath unto Satan, and you therefore are now subject to all the things that you were scaring people about with your analysis, which I'm going to show is incorrect. But I will say this: on the surface, there is an error that happened between the Hebrew Matthew, which we have now recovered by by Professor Howard, and we can see there's a word that got dropped out of Jesus's words in the Sermon on the Mount. It does make it look like it's an absolute prohibition, but once you hear the missing word, you'll go, "Oh, okay." And then there's every reason to believe the Hebrew Matthew is more authentic than our own Bible, just so you know, in certain respects. And we only need to decide this one because you get the absurd result that Jesus would be a false prophet for abrogating the law that did require oaths in legal settings. And Jesus was, you'll see what the missing word was. We'll get to that later. But anyway, let's just finish this up here. So yeah, and so if you lived in California, we have the same rule, but it's discretionary. Instead of a mandatory 5,000 like federal, if you try to say I don't want to sign this document because it's under penalty of perjury, they consider that automatically frivolous or groundless. You're done. And in California, it's an amount not in excess of $5,000. This is under California Revenue and Tax Code 19714. So please, Californians, don't get any influence from Brenda's postings because you will be in big trouble. 5,000 federal, mandatory, probably. Okay. And based on that case, I told you First Amendment right does not supersede the duty to sign under penalty of perjury. And in state of California, it's discretionary, but I bet you they'll join in. And then don't try to appeal because it's an automatic penalty for more delay. Now you pay another 25,000 on top of the 5,000. So it's a no-win situation. Brenda, you're going to have to decide: do you want to reevaluate and take a look at this missing word, or are you going to be not listening? Because that won't be wise. That would not be prudent to not listen to. Okay, so we're going to now introduce Brenda's piece that I thought at first was like an attack piece, like very vicious and demonizing me. But she demonizes everybody who takes an oath. Medical doctors who take a Hippocratic oath. She demonizes them. They are taking literally, she says, taking an oath to Satan, and therefore giving their will up completely to the demon Satan. And so I'm going to play that clip after this clip. I'll come back first, and then so see how she attacks me, and so don't. I'm not offended, but I think we need to hear the level of her what she based her conclusions on, so we have that firmly in mind.
But this channel, Jesus Words Only, is a wolf. His name is Doug. He's also a lawyer, okay? An officer of the judicial system. And as you know, a few videos ago, I posted warning about those who swore an oath in order to operate in their profession. So, because he has sworn an oath to Satan, being a lawyer, he is influenced by spirits other than the Holy Spirit, the Rauch Hoshedesh.
Okay, and now we'll listen to her video, just an excerpt where you'll see she demonizes everybody who takes oaths. So it wasn't specific to me. And so that's why it's important for anybody who is listening, it fits in all these other professions: doctors, lawyers, accountants, anybody who's required to take an oath, jurors, judges have to take oaths, the Supreme Court, the judges on state courts, everybody takes oaths. And by the way, it's required in the law, in the Bible too, in certain situations, and people take oaths at weddings all the time. So Brenda, I'm going to show you why Jesus didn't say what you think he said, and I think you'll see why everybody else knows there's a legal appropriate thing the Bible even endorsed on taking oaths for legal situations that you're in, and such as taking on a civic responsibility. That's a licensed profession, so licenses can be conditioned on you taking an oath, and it's designed for public safety. Anyway, so let's hear what she said.
Isn't it interesting how in this world, in order to have positions that are prestigious and prosperous, you must swear an oath? Did you catch that? Isn't it interesting how to have any kind of prestigious or prosperous job or position on this world, you must swear an oath. Do you see how cunning the devil is? He makes you swear an oath to him, and then he gives you that money. He gives you what you want. Yes, a lot of people are altruistic and they go into these fields wanting to help and to make the world a better place, but that is the most biggest deception. That's what makes it so easy for you to give up your free will. You sworn an oath to the devil to try and do good for the world, but that obviously is not working out. Look at the world.
Okay, so let's look at the big picture about oaths. So there are oaths to God that we should be taking. That's I don't think Brenda's objecting to that, but that helps us get a better context. So the Jewish Virtual Library, this is interesting. It actually says the eschatological acceptance of God by non-Israelites, that means us Gentiles, is also expressed through an oath of allegiance to Him. That's in Isaiah 19 verse 18 and chapter 45 verse 23. So when you looked at the translation that Brenda was relying upon, we haven't gotten to her version yet, but she's going to rely upon Matthew 5:33 that says, "You shall not take an oath at all." Well, then that Jesus would be abrogating the very step that a Gentile has to take to get salvation. And so we have to wonder, by the way, what does it mean to swear to the Lord of hosts in Isaiah to obtain salvation? And when does that happen for us? And when have we all done that? So apparently Jewish people think that's something that's supposed to happen to us. Did we lose something between the time of our originally Ebionite church and the present where we don't know we're supposed to do this, like at our first baptism? So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing it out there. So let's turn to Isaiah 19, verse 18 and 45:23. And they say, "In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction. I have sworn by myself, the word has gone out of my mouth, and righteousness and shall not return, that unto me every knee shall bow and every tongue shall swear." Now, again, this is the Jewish people interpret this as not an eschatological thing at the end of time. This is something that as you come into the kingdom, this is what you're supposed to do. Okay. Most Christians don't know about this, and I'd like to hear more commentary about this. But I'm just here to tell you about oaths, not whether we've got to do this oath for salvation. But clearly, oaths are required. To this, I would add Jeremiah 12, verse 16 to 17, and this reads this way: "And if they learn well the ways of my people and swear by my name," so this is towards Gentiles. This is what I found. This wasn't the virtual library citation, so I thought I better go find something better. I thought. And if they, meaning Gentiles, learn well the ways of my people and swear by my name, saying, "As surely as the Lord lives," even as they once taught my people to swear by Baal, so these are the bad people on the Gentile side, then they will be established among my people. But if any nation does not listen, I will completely uproot and destroy it, declares the Lord. So taking an oath is a serious way of pleasing the Lord, apparently. And so it says, "Swear by my name." So apparently that's maybe it's been lost somehow in the transmission from early Christianity, and we didn't get the right message that we're supposed to maybe at baptism take an oath of fidelity towards God, something. Thus, what if someone tells you never to take an oath under these verses, as apparently, and that's what Jesus appears to say in Brenda's version of the Hebrew of Matthew, that Jesus says, "Do not take any oath at all." I'm going to read to you the Hebrew Matthew in the next second after I'm done with this article here, and it won't have that in there. So that's just a hint that what she's looking at is also a poor translation, even of the Greek, but wrong, ultimately wrong. That's the point here. So under these verses, and as apparently correctly interpreted at Jewish Virtual Library, you could never become accepted by God if you are a non-Israelite, if you did not take an oath of allegiance to God. So just something to think about, Brenda. I know you did make that exception for an oath to God, but then it's important to know what kind of oath and where and when is that important. So if there is an oath to God, maybe when we take oaths, "So help me God," maybe that means that oath is done properly. If it's done in a legal setting and is not done frivolously to get someone to just believe you, like we know Paul does all the time. He does it 6 different times. He says, "I'm telling you the truth." Basically, God is my witness. And so that's you're not supposed to use it in a frivolous manner, not in a not in a situation that is not a serious legal commitment being involved. Anyway, so I actually throw in here, if applicable, which we are examining, then it suggests we should be taking an oath of allegiance to God Yahweh, probably at baptism and possibly regularly in prayer time. So something to think about. Not telling anybody what to do. So be careful, very careful in determining whether the Bible teaches you never are to take an oath. And that's exactly what it sounds like Jesus says. And so that can't be right. As we shall explore here, it clearly does sometimes require an oath. There were two mistranslations in the New Testament that made it appear that we should do otherwise. One is at Matthew 5:33 and the other at James 5, verse 12. And so let's take a look here at the Jewish Virtual Library summarizing the oaths that you would take in the law. So there's lots of oaths. I might not read this whole thing here, but let's just read some of this. The exculpatory oath exacted by the plaintiff from the defendant to back the latter's plea of innocence when no witnesses to the facts was available. That's an oath required. So if we believe the law still applies, then we have to have this option of an exculpatory oath and follow the principles there. The oath was taken at the sanctuary. Now we don't have a temple, so maybe this law is in suspense. Maybe not. If the defendant took the oath, the suit was decided in his favor. So there's no temple, so maybe that doesn't apply anymore. On the other hand, if he refused to swear, the plea was automatically rebutted and he lost the suit. So you had to take oaths in order to keep your suit going forward. If you didn't take the oath, you lost your suit. Kind of makes sense to me. And by the way, in courts of law, each side always is taking an oath. So if one side said, I'm not going to show up in court and swear under oath that everything I've alleged is true, you lose. So we actually have this law effectively within our own civil law. So if you said, I'm not going to testify as a witness, because, hey, wait a minute, the Bible gives us an analogy. There is no temple anymore that this would be operative at. But you know what? It's good. It makes sense. So you want to pursue your legal case, you've got to take an oath. If you want to defend your legal suit, you got to be willing to take an oath. You go under oath and swear. So you see, the law is still a guide, even when there's situations that are specifically not any longer applicable because the temple's gone. We should still use it for the present, and we do. Okay, next. Such as self-convicted liars referred to in Ecclesiastes 9, verse 2 as he who is afraid of the oath. Note especially his position as the second pejorative member of his pair, paralleling the wicked, the impure of the preceding pairs. So here I want to say something is, so when you go into a court in that situation, if you usually you get an opportunity to say, so help you God. Maybe that's exactly what makes the oath valid. If you took those words out, then you would not be it would not be a valid oath in court, and biblically and usually legally. Although there's options for conscientious people who don't want to say the word God, they're allowed to do that. They just have to say it's under penalty of perjury. Okay, a perjurer who repents and wishes to clear himself before God and man must follow the prescription of Leviticus 5, verse 20 through 26. A special case of exculpatory oath is that the suspected adulteress, it's cursed. But by the way, I think that Leviticus passage meant, according to the virtual library, you have to take an oath there. A special case of exculpatory oath is that of the suspected adulteress. Its curse is effected through the ordeal of the bitter waters that induce the spell. Okay, anyway, there's another oath that resolves adultery issues. So we're going to show you that Matthew 5:33 was had a word dropped off. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to take you out to the Hebrew Matthew so you can see, Brenda, you in particular, because your Bible doesn't match this. So this will help you be able to file your tax returns and not worry about signing it. Okay. Okay, so Brenda and everybody, this is verse 33. And Brenda, this is radically different from what you have. And this is the Hebrew Matthew. And I'm going to explain after I read this why this has a lot of authority should have a lot of authority when we get to problem passages like this, where Jesus in your version is going to look like he's a apostate, that he says you can't take any oath at all. And we just saw there's lots of oaths you should be taking. So here's what it says in the Hebrew Matthew. George Howard published this in 1989, and this is based on a Shem Tab that the Jewish people had preserved the Christian scriptures all these centuries, and they were doing it so they would know what we believe. So they kept track of what our original church said, and our original church had a Hebrew Matthew, and they had this gospel in Hebrew. So it has a lot of tracing all the way back to the original Hebrew Matthew prior to the Roman Catholic Church destroying that Hebrew Matthew in time. So the Jewish people were secretly hiding this away, and now they got to give it to us. It was a treasure, and but they stopped doing this around 1356. So this is from the Shem Tov. It's called Shem Tov from about 1356. There's about 6 or 7 or 8 different versions of it, and but Howard put together the best version. So here's how it reads. Again, you have heard what was said to those of long ago. You shall not swear by my name falsely, but you shall return to the Lord your oath. And by the way, see that it always said you can't take an oath falsely. It was you had to take oaths. So the idea that it said you couldn't swear uh, it doesn't make sense. So this makes perfect sense. And then the verse 34, but I say to you, do not swear in vain in any matter, neither by heaven, because it is the throne of God, nor by the earth, and so on. We go through the whole list. In vain means when people are talking like Paul does, like, take my word for it, God's my witness, all that kind of stuff. That's using the name of God very vainly, very inappropriately, if you will, because you're just trying to tell somebody, you must believe me because I've just used the name of God. But it's not in a court setting. It's not where you can be punished for lying. It's a one-on-one. So it's just really throwing the name of God around inappropriately and swearing something's true to your friend or associate, or maybe in an epistle that Paul's writing. It's not the way it's supposed to work. So Paul, if he had read what Jesus said, I think he would have said, I better not use it. I should not use it in vain. So you see that that other word, in vain and falsely, are two very material differences in the Hebrew Matthew. And I'm going to give you a short lesson why we know this is more authentic. And it's a funny thing. Do you know that when it says in the Bible, the Greek Bible, it says John the Baptist ate locusts, right? Well, the word locust is a error of the copyist, and I'll tell you how we know what the original word was. So when you see the Hebrew Matthew and you see the word is for manna, and then you realize if you translate manna into honey cakes, which is how Jewish people would do it. It's the Septuagint translated as honey cakes. So manna was translated as honey cakes then in the Septuagint 257 BC. So that would be what the Hebrew Matthew probably was translated into manna. Well, if you write it down, but you make a mistake with one letter, it goes from Arba to Arba, and now you've got locusts. So we know it originally read manna. Somebody was trying to translate it to honey cakes. They then copied it wrong by just one letter, the first letter, and changed what was manna, honey cakes, and they changed it uh, into locusts. And how do we know that? Because oddly enough, Epiphanius condemned the Ebionites for changing the passage from locusts to honeycakes. So what he was looking at is somebody had translated the Hebrew Matthew into Greek, and he's looking at it, and it says honeycakes, and he thinks that somebody has perverted the Greek New Testament because it says honeycakes when that's the correct one, and that's how we know what was the original word back in the 300s. Epiphanius is writing around 360 AD, so we know for a fact that this mistake happened by going up from a translation from the Hebrew Matthew to the Greek, and that's how we know what we're looking at here is the more authentic version of our Hebrew Matthew. How about that? Isn't God great? There's always a way back to the word of God. People don't like to know that there are mistakes and things happen, but you know what? Human beings are still human beings. They make mistakes, and this helps cure that. And you can sign your tax return now, Brenda, and realize as long as it's not done falsely or in vain, you're throwing God's name out and saying, take my word for it. If it's as a legal situation, it's an important thing, like paying your taxes, going into court and swearing out a case. You want to make a complaint, you want to make a defense, you just have to do it seriously. And the serious thing is you have to swear before God, because God will hold you accountable for that. He will. And so that's where it's appropriate. Okay. So there's times and places to do it, and it's appropriate. And when you get sworn in as a lawyer, you have to swear your fidelity to the Constitution, and I'm sure there was other things. It was 40 some odd plus years ago. I don't remember the oath, but I'm sure it was uphold the Constitution of California and the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. Who knows? what else. But anyway, so that's why it's done. It's for good. It's not for evil, and it's definitely not an oath to Satan. And Brenda, I want to share with you this and everybody else is Nehemiah Gordon is a Karaite Jew, and they have the same principle of Jesus, where you don't add traditions that make of none effect the law of God. So they have kind of a Jesus approach to how to read the law. And he has been very much in close fellowship with the ministry of Michael Rood and others like that, who he's supported, and he sometimes is treated as a brother amongst them, and so he loves Christians, and he makes the same point. And he wrote a book called Yeshua, the Hebrew Yeshua and the Greek Jesus, I think is what it was. Anyway, so he makes the point: if Jesus taught taking an oath were wrong, like it reads in your version of the Hebrew Matthew, of Greek Matthew, then Jesus would contradict the original testament, and he would be a false prophet. Deuteronomy 13:1-5. Hence, the variant that spares Jesus is valid. It derives from a Hebrew text that appears to have an element older than our Greek. And I say, see Howard. This text is the means of repairing the discord between the Greek version of Matthew 5:33 and the original Bible. Okay, so he had a lot of pages on that. I think I have it somewhere, all the pages. I think it may be below here. Anyway, let's get back to this. And then James 5:12 is the other verse that's used for this argument, but it has also several manuscripts and that show it means it has a widely different meaning. Let me see what it says here. So now, as it is a fact that the Jews did teach that there might be a mental reservation that would annul the oath, how solemnly soever it was taken, the object of St. James is that the last reading be genuine, and it is supported by a great number of excellent manuscripts, some versions, and some of the most eminent of fathers says it was to guard against the hypocritical method of taking the oath. Okay, so yes, that's what it is. So basically, he says, don't take oaths lest you fall into hypocrisy. So basically, it was that to basically don't use dissimulation. So if you take an oath, give your word, be straight, but it was not a flat prohibition on taking oaths. Okay, so now let's listen to Brenda reading the English translation she had. I think it was called CNB. It's hard to see the small print. And she was relying upon that for her views. And that explains a lot because it's very different than the Hebrew Matthew, for sure.
because those oaths are binding. Now, we learn in Matthew 5, where Jesus, Yeshua himself, tells us that we must always tell the truth. And he says, and again, you have heard that it is said to our ancestors, you must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord. Verse 34, but I tell you, do not take an oath at all. Okay? Either by heaven, because it's God's throne, or by earth, because it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. Do not swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. And let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. Okay, so we are only to keep an oath to Father God Yahuwah, period. We are not to take oaths for office or positions. This is one way Satan has secured these people in these positions to himself. They have sworn an oath to him, to this world.
Okay, and just to remind us, the Hebrew Matthew was verse 33. Instead of you're not to take an oath at all, that's what you heard. It says, again, you have heard what was said to those of long ago, the Hebrew Matthew of Howard. And I'm going to give you the face page of the document. So if you want to buy this book, you can go order that on Amazon if you like. You shall not swear by my name falsely, but you shall return to the Lord your oath. But I say to you, do not swear in vain, not at all. It's not like not at all. In in vain in any matter, neither by heaven, because it is the throne of God, nor by earth, and so on and so forth. So let me give you the face page. All those who are interested. Hebrew Gospel of Matthew by Professor George Howard of Religion at University of Georgia, Mercer Press, 1995. And if you are a Hebrew enthusiast, on one side he has the Hebrew and the other the English translation that he's offering. So now I'm going to play one last clip, and that's going to be the whole reason why she's demonizing me, but not just me, but everybody who's in the professions but to particularly me, is because she's using that to then justify her doctrine about the Trinity. Now what's interesting is she is in this quote. You're going to hear it, and I really would love her to explain this to me, or any of you who think you know what she's saying. She says the Trinity is false, and then she affirms a doctrine, which is exactly the Trinity. So if I'm wrong, please someone explain to me.
Try to discredit me and my comments quoting the scripture of Yahuwah, his words. Your argument that not only God, let me try this again. Your argument that only God can do all the things Jesus did is a way of denigrating Jesus, the man, and his achievements. The man and his achievements. God at baptism said Jesus pleased him very much. But if God is truly looking at his other self, why be pleased? Again, he's coming from at the Roman Catholic teaching of the Trinity, which is false. Okay? The Trinity teaching that you hear is false. You must study the word to understand that they are three persons in one mind, one heart, one spirit, one truth. Three persons in one. It all comes from the Father first. And then the Father creates things through Yeshua and Rauch Hoshedesh. They all three act as one, but there is only one, and it comes from the Father first. Okay? Do your homework. Take everything you hear to Father for confirmation and have him lead you. Have him send the Rauch Hoshedesh to you to lead you to the truth.
So we're done, and I hope this helped people see a very problematical passage. And I will say, I've gotten more letters about this passage over the last 15 years I ran my website. If you go to the page on this, I have letter after letter where people would ask me about this particular passage over and over again, because really, on the face of it, if you're pro Jesus, you want to affirm it. But on the other hand, he would be an apostate the way it reads in the Greek, that he abrogated all oaths, which, by the way, is possibly why the reading reads the way it reads. It reads like Paul could have written it, right? Because it's an abrogation of all oaths. You are not to take an oath at all. Well, then Jesus is speaking clearly contrary to the law, right? The word "at all," like Brenda had, why is Jesus said? I mean, there's really no oath you can ever take, and they're all demonic. I mean, basically, because Jesus has abrogated that principle of law. So that's my suspicion. Is the reason for this is not just simply that the Hebrew Matthew kept a better copy. It's that the Gentile church wanted to find ways of rewording things so that Jesus looked like he was going along with Paul's idea, like, hey, this was the law. We've got to tear it down as much as we can, because that was definitely the Roman Catholic 325 era, post Constantine's. They're totally trying to divide us and separate us as far as possible from the Jewish people, so we'd have nothing in common. Our religion would be like totally a new religion, and it wouldn't surprise me that that's why these verses are so radically different. Okay, God bless. Hope that helps everybody. Ciao.